of knowing how to reverse and prevent disease, Lord, through natural means. We invite your Spirit to guide us. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so this is about transforming our diet. It's about transforming our life. It's not just a lifestyle. It's not just a diet. It is a program that really transforms our life, mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally, in every single way. And this isn't just about diabetes, because there's a lot of cofactors that go along with diabetes, such as hypertension, hyperlipidemia, obesity. Then there's the side effects of blindness and infections, and we know that a lot of people get amputations, and the list just kind of goes on and on when it comes to diabetes. And the good thing is that much of this is diet and lifestyle related. Most of the talk is going to be on diet, but there are other factors as well. And so when we look at the power of diet, okay, so this isn't working. Daryl, can you help me here? Okay. So I'm not able to. Oh, there we go. Okay. Thank you. All right. So what is a good diet? It's not one that's just temporary. It's one that we can maintain for life, that it promotes overall good health, that it promotes weight loss and maintenance naturally, and allows us to eat until we're satisfied. How many diets do we know that we're limited to 1,200 calories or even less sometimes? And we literally starve ourselves in order to have weight loss. But then as soon as we get to our weight loss, or we go to the wedding, or we have the event that, our class reunion, and as soon as the event is over, then we go back to our old diet and lifestyle, and then the weight comes back on again. And then because our body has shifted its metabolism, now we gain even more weight than what we started with. So it's a diet is actually one that we can maintain for life. So when I talk about diet, this is my definition of how I'm using it. I'm not using a diet for short term. And I would like to have you switch your mindset, not from reversing diabetes or reversing disease or even longevity, but recognizing that our body is a temple. And when we recognize that our body is that we only have one life to live, and it's the only house that we have to live in, and if we have good health as the motivator, then all of a sudden, everything else kind of falls in place. And so what about diabetes here in Canada? So there are currently 1.3 million, or almost 5% of the population of Canadians living with diabetes. Oh, thank you for saying that. Is that okay now? Okay, thank you. All right. So there's also over 8% of the population from 2017 to 2018. So we see that it has doubled over time. And then now in 2024 to 25, it's 11.6% of the population, or 4.4 million. My question is, we have all these diabetes associations of the world, of every nation, and then even a World Diabetes Association. And my question is, if what they were doing was actually working, wouldn't our numbers be going down? And so to me, it makes me question, well, maybe we should be looking somewhere else and looking farther, maybe looking deeper, because what we're doing right now isn't working. And there are 1.5 more million people that don't even know they have diabetes. And every 3 minutes, another Canadian is diagnosed with diabetes. 29% of Canadians are living either with diabetes or pre-diabetes. 29%, and then 33% of Canadians are recognized right now in 2025. 14 billion in healthcare costs each year, and then the worldwide cases have doubled in 20 years. It seems like there's a new and fresh approach that is needed. So what gives me qualifications? I'm a researcher, so I know what the research says. And do we actually follow it in the world? I would say that we're probably pretty far from what the research says. So I'm going to show you some research, and it's quite stark and very obvious how much that diet and lifestyle actually helps for people with diabetes. But I've also been a diabetes educator, a certified diabetes educator for 15 years. But when I moved to Canada, I let it lapse, but I still have the knowledge. I may not have the certification. And I also brought a diabetes program in the U.S. up to national standards through the American Diabetes Association. And I was collaborating with 3 states, mine and 2 others, to look at the best practice. So there were statisticians and third parties looking at our stats with electronic medical records. And for the almost 6 years that I was there, or 6.5 years that I was there, my program actually was the model program for 3 states, and always came out number 1 statistically, constantly. Less hospitalizations, less amputations, less blindness, less emergency room visits, less clinic visits with doctors. It was less surgeries. It was just in every single categories, people getting off of their drugs, people losing weight, their A1C and all of their metabolic numbers going down, and with only diet. And the amazing thing is that people in all 3 states were just kept asking me, what are you doing? I mean, this is amazing. I mean, this is like so far ahead of everybody else. What are you doing? I would never talk to them on the phone. I would always say, you got to come. You come through my class, and I'll teach you what it is that I'm doing. And they would come, and by the end of class, they would just say, you know, you're just working with a really unique group of people here. And that wouldn't work in my community. And, you know, but the statistics in research shows that is absolutely not true. So there is a lot of proof out there that this is, that this fresh approach really does work. So I hope you can read that. So there's a lot of modifiable risk factors with diabetes, and that should be the hopeful thing, that we aren't just caught up in this with the rat race of now taking drugs and having monthly or quarterly visits constantly with your doctor or with a diabetes educator, and you're just on this constant rounds of medication and getting worse, and side effects and symptoms, maybe even from medications, diabetes getting worse. But I'm not talking about management. I'm talking about actually reversing it. And I was using, I think I was the first one that I knew that was combining the word reversing and diabetes in the same sentence. And that was that was 25 years ago. I was freely using those 2 words in the same sentence, and people thought I was crazy, but yet the statistics showed that it was happening. So there's a lot of modifiable things that we can do, and that's the positive thing. The positive thing is that there's a lot that you can do, that if food and lifestyle has been the problem, then the reversal of the same comes from food and lifestyle. So, and one of the big things is a lack of fiber in the diet, specifically a lack of fruits and vegetables, and a lack of whole grains, beans, legumes, nuts, seeds. And when we're looking at specifically fiber, then we're looking at the national standards are generally at high 25 to 35 grams per day. But I usually encourage my clients who I work with at least 50 to 100. That is not, that's not impossible to get. And if we are adding the right foods to our diet, we can easily get to 100. If we look at the research from long ago, we see that people in the Asian countries got 100 every day with no problem. But now they've plummeted because they are more on a Western type diet as well. Another, so you'll notice that these, so I've got the a bullet point here, and then I've got these are in the lowercase or the smaller font. This is the research. So if you want to go to the research, feel free. So I've got that after every single one of them in the next many slides where I'm talking about research. So this particular, notice that these are all 2025, and the research literally is peppered with the research talking about reversing diabetes in one way or another, either directly or indirectly. And so these are all in 2025. And so this particular study identified a lack of fiber and sugar as a main issue for school-age children, because now we see that more school-age children are getting diabetes more than ever before. It used to be called adult onset, but now it's called, it's just called diabetes type 2. And it's because we aren't feeding our children the high fiber, the fruits and the vegetables and the beans and the grains that our body actually requires in order for it to be at its most healthful. The Western diet, which is our diet here, the SAD diet, the standard American diet, Western diets low in fiber are linked to chronic inflammation and type 2 diabetes through gut dysbiosis and poor metabolic regulation. What does that mean? It means that I have I have bugs in my gut. You do, I do, that's a normal part of life, and if you didn't have it, we'd die. We have to have these bugs. We live with a symbiotic relationship with these bugs, but it's the particular kind of bugs that are in our gut that makes a difference. And what bugs are in there is directly related to the food that we eat. So if we're constantly, because there's good guys and bad guys in there. And if we are eating McDonald's and Burger King and junk food and all of the processed foods that we are constantly bombarded with and our homes are filled with, that's the kind of bugs that get fed. And that's the kind of bugs then that are in there. And because the good bugs need good food in order for it to stay alive. It can't eat off of the junk food. So if we want a good gut bacteria, we have to be eating a lot of fruits and vegetables and beans and grains, whole grains. And so usually what I say is, how do we know? So my rule is, can you pick it from a garden or from a tree? Now, we're talking about ideal here. So can we pick white rice from a garden or from a tree? No. We cannot pick white rice, but we can pick brown rice, right? So that's kind of the criteria that I'm using here. And so when we start to feed our gut the whole food, plant-based foods that are out there, unrefined, now all of a sudden the good bacteria can start to come back again. But that can take time, because it can take weeks or even months for that to come back again. So it's just like if we have, if we're keeping chickens and we don't feed them for a month, it's going to take time to feed them before their gut can come back. Or if we fast for a long time, it takes time for that gut bacteria to come back again. So we have to refeed very careful, just like any other animal would. So our bacteria is directly linked to the food that we eat. And it's because of that lack of food that creates the bad bacteria that gives us that high risk of diabetes. And so it's also for pre-pregnancy. Low fiber intake in pre-pregnancy diets increase gestational diabetes, which is a precursor to type 2 diabetes later. If we get gestational diabetes, that is like a red flag. It should be like an explanation point saying hello, a warning sign saying that I'm if I don't change my diet, then I eventually will go ahead and get diabetes. That risk is super, super high. And then there's another one in this last one here. This review looks at a whole bunch of different research papers with certain criteria, and they all have to have the same criteria. And what they've done is they've looked at all of these studies with their certain criteria, and it shows that low fiber, high fat diets are a central driver in metabolic syndromes, including type 2 diabetes mellitus. So that one is a review of a whole bunch of different, so it's like a meta-analysis where you take a whole bunch of different research papers and now you write on those papers. And it's a really good overview. Now, so we see that low fiber diet, and I put up here that there are thousands of research articles. Since I have been doing this since 1999, I have literally thousands of research articles. I was reading thousands even back then. And there's even more. And you can see, again, I grabbed the latest ones that I could find. There's just so many of them, even in 2025, this year, and we're just over halfway over this year. And so this review shows how a high fiber, how a fiber-induced gut microbiota composition plays a central role in both the development and control of type 1 diabetes. People usually think that there's not much that we can do for type 1 diabetes, but there's actually a lot that we can do. We may or may not be able to get them off of insulin depending on how long they've had type 1 diabetes because it's an autoimmune disease, but still our diet absolutely can improve even with type 1 on a high fiber diet. And here's another one, 2025. This is another review. It shows that both isolated fibers and whole food fiber sources help in glucose regulation and improves insulin responses. I'm going to show you physiologically how that happens in a little bit. I'm going to actually show you a diagram, and I'm going to show you a chart how that happens. And then this other one in 2025 is also about type 1 diabetes, that it demonstrates that a high fiber meal replacement improves postprandial glycemic responses, while tested on pre-diabetics. The physiological mechanism applies also to type 1 diabetes, so type 1 and type 2. And again, this is about high fat. There are, again, thousands of research articles. I just grabbed the latest ones that I could find. Here's one that isn't even published yet in the research, but it's already slotted to be published in the next one. So I just wanted to, because as soon as there's a whole process that when a research article is handed in or submitted, that there's a whole process that it has to go through under review in order for it to get in. And so they have months and months in advance of their magazines, their research journals that are filled with research that was submitted many, many months ago. And so this one is going to be submitted next in line. And this one links a high-fat diet to hepatic fat accumulation and insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes, emphasizing that a lifestyle change is a primary prevention. Now, this is for prevention and reversal of it. This one also shows that that there's a difference between saturated and unsaturated fats in inducing type 2 diabetes. When we are looking at the type of fat, it is the animal fats or the saturated fats. It's a totally different fat than fats that are found in plants. So one fat is not the same as the other fat. So fat that comes from nuts and seeds, avocados and olives are not the same as the fat that comes from animals, whether it's fish or chicken or beef or pork or dairy products or eggs or anything. They're totally different structurally. One is a saturated fat and one is a polyunsaturated or a monounsaturated fat. And the more bonds that there are, they are less flexible in the body, and they can and when they're less flexible, they can't be flexible to get into the smallest parts of our vessels, which are usually our eyes, our ears, our spine. So many times when we have back problems, it might be because of our diet. We're having too much saturated fat. And if we just switch and get rid of that type of saturated fat, and we swap over to an unsaturated fat diet with plants, then we will see that many times with drinking water, getting our stomach strengthened as well, and going on a plant-based diet, that our back problems often just go away. And yet there are so many people who go to surgery for back problems, and many times it's completely reversible, depending on what their issue is, of course. Now, this one, a high saturated fat diet and a low fiber intake correlate with type 2 diabetes onset. So you think about, you've got a high saturated fat, a low fiber diet, and that is like a recipe for destruction. So a high fat diet, this is another one from 2025. All of these are. Cross-country evidence shows that a low plant-based diet lowers type 2 diabetes risk compared to Western-style high-fat diets. And this one used the research called the UK Biobank and the China Health and Nutrition Survey, and they compared it then to Western diets and showed that their diets are much higher in fiber, less in animal products. So, you know, what this shows me, does this have to be an all or a none? It actually doesn't have to be an all or a none. The more that we reduce our animal products and the more that we increase our fiber, our natural fiber in the form of fruits, vegetables, and beans and whole grains, then we can start to offset that balance. So it's not even an all or a none, but there is at no point where there is no risk anymore. So the more that we reduce our animal products, so if we eat this much animal products, we have this risk of disease. If we start to reduce our animal products, that's the same of our risk of disease. So it goes down to zero, actually, the research shows. So even a little bit of animal products is a little bit of risk of disease, but at least it's not high anymore. So there is a continuum. So it's not an all or a none. Just reduce your animal products, increase by huge amounts your beans and your grains and fruits and vegetables, and you're going to start seeing some huge difference, not only just in diabetes, but all of the other cofactors that I talked about as well, and you're going to start losing weight because that's kind of the way that it goes. This next one demonstrates that a high-fat diet alters gut microbiota again, and it impairs glucose regulation and increasing susceptibility to type 2 diabetes. And so again, it's our gut microbiome that gives us that high risk. So if we have good gut bacteria, we reduce our risk again. So the more plants that we eat, the better, and the more healthy bacteria that we have. And so again, is it an all or a none? No, it's not an all or a none, but again, we can reduce our risk, to to very, very low. You know, we just live in this world with all sorts of pollution, so is it all related to diet? No. I mean, so we can never reduce our risk to zero, but we can certainly reduce it by a huge, huge amount. And this next one provides evidence that the typical high-fat foods, such as cakes and pastries, increase our risk of type 2 diabetes, but then again showing that fiber actually mitigates that effect. So this is about a whole food plant-based diet. Again, there are just thousands and thousands of articles that just pepper the research out there. There was just so much that is just mind-boggling. It is so much that I just feel like it should be such common knowledge. Like, why am I even talking about diabetes up here? Because it's like, it should just be so common knowledge, because it's available to everybody online. We can all go to PubMed and you can all look in the research and find what you need. And that's what I do. I just look in PubMed and it just all pops up, and you know, you have to know your terminology and you have to kind of know what to link your words with and how to do a search, a proper search, you know, in PubMed. But it's amazing. And sometimes I just think, you know, why am I doing these talks? Because it should just be common knowledge, and no one even wants to hear about this anymore. But yet we see that our diabetes numbers just keep climbing and climbing and climbing, so people aren't looking in the right places. So about a whole food plant-based diet, that's what WFPBB stands for, whole food plant-based diet. So this particular research, again, they're all 2025. You know, I don't even need to use anything from 2024. I mean, there's just so much, even just in 2025. And then if I include, you know, for the last 30, 40 years of research, there's just thousands. And, you know, and so I've actually done other talks that I give a progress throughout history. So I show research from like the 1920s showing, you know, this kind of research, and then it's just kind of peppered all throughout. But for this talk, I've chosen just the most recent ones. So this one found that consistent evident, not inconsistent, but consistent, that a vegetarian plant-based diets are associated with lower type 2 diabetes risk, especially a high-quality whole food plant-based diet. Now, there are whole food plant-based, it's not technically whole food plant-based if it's a bunch of processed foods. So would Twinkies and you know, and Cadbury, are they whole food plant-based, or at least are they plant-based? They're not animal-based, right? And so we can be on a very unhealthy plant-based diet. And so the more that we cut down those high processed foods, which a huge portion of foods in the grocery store are these ultra processed foods. You've got a whole line of potato chips, a whole line of sodas, you know, and all of this highly processed breakfast cereals, a whole line. Those are highly processed. Most of the breads, highly processed. The pastas, highly processed. And so once we start to read labels, we can start looking at the chemicals that are in them and start to really, you know, take a better look, a closer look at some of these ingredients that we're actually consuming that most of us really don't really give much thought about. So this was a meta-analysis that this shows that a meta-analysis is again, taking a whole bunch of research articles within a confined criteria that is predetermined before they even look at the research. And they gather all the research that they can find. So sometimes it's 10, 20, 50 or more, or 100 research articles, and now they analyze all of them. And this one again shows that a vegan, whole food, plant-based diet improves A1C, fasting glucose, and insulin sensitivity. And then this next one showed that a whole food plant-based with less red meat and sugary beverages significantly reduced type 2 diabetes mortality burden. Yes, sir. Um, yes, I put that up there thinking I would remember. I, yes, it's research. Yeah, just recent papers. Yeah, I put that in there, so I didn't want this whole long sentence in there, and now I've forgotten what it means. But it's just research. Okay, here's another about reversing diabetes now. So the other one was preventing, and again, these just represent thousands again of research articles. So a whole food plant-based diet intervention reversed metabolic markers of type 2 diabetes, obesity, and cardiovascular disease within weeks. This next one describes how a whole food plant-based diet is a low-cost therapy and that it's capable of reversing chronic diseases, including type 2 diabetes. Yes? Oh, all of them. I mean, the far majority of them. Yeah. Yeah, because so what researchers do is they figure out who do they want to test. And so say I want to test people, type 2 diabetes, who have been hospitalized in this particular town or this particular hospital. Or I'm going to follow the diabetes patients who are in this one particular clinic. Or I'm going to create my own research and call it Dr. Janie's Whole Food Plant-Based Reversing Diabetes Program. And now I find people through different means of doing this. Some of them do, they compare two different groups. So, I mean, there's just all sorts of ways to study these groups, but they're using actual people. That's a good question. And then this other one, this documentation shows the clinical outcomes of a whole food plant-based diet, that it actually reverses type 2 diabetes in a hospital-based setting. And there's just all sorts of settings, research settings. It just, it doesn't really matter what setting it is. It just shows again and again and again and again that a whole food plant-based diet is the key. But we also see other research that I didn't include in here, like the Mediterranean diet. The Mediterranean diet still has animal products, but it has lots of plants. And so we see that on the Western standard diet, there's this much risk of diabetes, and then there's this much risk on the Mediterranean, but then there's this much risk on a whole food plant-based. So we see that it does improve. So is it an all or a none? No, but it does improve our risk. And so there are other things. I don't want to spend too much time on the other things, but I wanted to just highlight a few of them. And again, they are also peppered throughout research. And this is how a sedentary lifestyle aids in diabetes, as well as really every other disease too. And again, these are 2025. There was one in 2024. This top one, the research demonstrated that prolonged sitting and TV viewing were strongly associated with a higher A1C. It's a glycohemoglobin A1C, and worse metabolic markers in type 2 diabetes patients. So women who spend more time watching TV, so this particular study looked at women and their time with watching TV during pregnancy had significantly higher risk of developing gestational diabetes, a strong precursor to diabetes type 2. And then this next one, other sedentary behaviors like gaming, and led to obesity and higher risk of type 2 diabetes in young adults. So I just kind of got different research, different people, and showing different things, but I could show multiple research articles from every single one of these topics. And then another big one is dehydration. So these are, again, from 2025. This top one shows that hydration, that inadequate hydration contributes to our cardiometabolic risk, including diabetes. So our cardio is metabolic, is diabetes, it's our metabolism, it's our heart, it's our cardiovascular, all of this. And in this next one, this research identified dehydration as a critical precipitating risk factor in diabetes ketoacidosis, underscoring water balance as vital in diabetes management. And this next one shows advice on maintaining adequate hydration to reduce risk of ketoacidosis in diabetic patients, showing fluid balance worsens metabolic stress. So when we have an imbalance and we're not drinking enough water, then we start to get all sorts of side effects, not just diabetes, but when we are chronically dehydrated, our body is put under a huge amount of stress. And so I generally recommend people to get at least 3 liters a day, and 4 if you can. One would be like 3 to 4 cups would be chugging first thing in the morning, but it's going to take you time to get there. If you're not used to that, you're going to get nauseous. And you're just going to think, I can't do this. So you got to start out with a 1/4 cup. And then every day you increase by a little bit until a few months later you're up to 3 to 4 cups. And because our body just doesn't take it that well in the beginning. All right, so how does this physiologically happen? Yes? 3 liters. Yeah, so that's really what we need for full hydration. So generally 2 to 3 liters. Yeah, and I recommend, a good 3. Yeah. So what we're looking at here, how does diabetes work? So this is a cell, and we have trillions and trillions of them in our body, and they have an insulin receptor site. So this is a cell, and then this is the ATP where energy is broken down. And our cells have an insulin receptor site, and this is an insulin. So the insulin is the same shape as the insulin receptor site. And I put a door here so you can understand what is actually happening here. So when this door is like the door of your house. So you put your key in, and the key is going to be like the insulin. And the door is going to be the insulin receptor site, and then your house is going to be the cell. So you put your key into the door, you unlock it, you open the door, all the humans walk in, and you close the door behind you. It's the same process with the insulin receptor site. So the insulin gets into the insulin receptor site, and it unlocks the door opens, the glucose goes in, and blood sugar goes down. That's a normal glucose response. And in our muscle cells and our livers also have insulin receptor sites. This is a storage unit. These both are storage. And when it comes, so our glucose goes to our muscles and says, knock, knock. The blood sugar is high because the pancreas has taste testers that taste test the blood, the sweetness of it, multiple times a second. And as the blood sugar goes up, the body immediately responds like that fast, within seconds. And as the insulin even creeps back up again, the pancreas starts to produce a little bit more insulin. And then as it shoots up, the pancreas now shoots out more insulin. And so the sugar needs a place to go, so it talks to the muscle cells and says, knock, knock, I need a place to go, because the blood sugars are going up, and the muscle says, sure, come on in. And so the door opens, and it puts a bunch of sugar in there, and now the blood sugars go down. But there might still be more sugar in the blood. But the muscle says, no, I can't take any more, because we have a maximum people who can be in our house or in our apartment too, right? I mean, if our house can hold 20 people, or 10 or 5 or 50, you know, that's how many it can hold. And that's all that can take. And that's the same as the muscle cells. They can only take a certain amount of glucose until it just closes the door and it will not open again. Now it's called insulin resistance. And then, so once the muscles say no more, then the body, the insulin now goes to the liver. And the liver, the insulin says, knock, knock, I have some more glucose. Can you take some glucose? And the liver says, sure, I'll take some glucose. And so our liver is now the storage place for our glucose. And now, but it can only take so much. It loads itself up. It just crams it in there as much as it can. As long as there's higher blood sugars, then it's just going to cram as much in there as it can. But it too has a maximum until it just closes. And now the insulin receptor says, hey, muscles, I need more. Nope, sorry. Hey, liver, I need more. The blood sugar needs to go up. Sorry. And so now the insulin receptors, the insulin now goes to the fat cells and says, hey, I need some help. And the fat cells are very, very resistant. They do not want to take glucose into it. But what happens is now I've got insulin resistance, and now I'm either injecting insulin, or my pancreas is producing tons and tons of insulin, and now it's like it's bullying its way into the fat cells. It's like now I don't no longer have one key trying to get into my door. I now have 50 friends behind me, and we just bust through the door. We don't even need a key at that time. And that's in simplicity, that's what happens now with the fat cells. It just busts down the doors, and as our insulin now pushes through, our fat cells now start to grow. And as our fat cells start to grow, then I start to grow. And now my insulin resistance becomes even worse. And so this process can happen on thin people. That's how people with type 2 diabetes can be thin and still have insulin resistance. There's wonderful research out there showing that was on, I didn't put it up here just because it's already several years old, but wonderful research showing young, healthy medical students, doctor students, and in 2 weeks, giving them a high-fat diet produced diabetes. 2 weeks. And then it took a couple of weeks for their bodies to kind of calm back down again, for it to reverse again. But generally, this is the general way of how this happens. And in most people, not everybody, but most people will eventually start to gain weight, because the side effect of more insulin, whether it's injected or whether it is my body is producing it, the side effect is weight gain. So it doesn't matter how it gets in. And so when we look at what is diabetes and we start to give somebody with type 2 diabetes insulin, it all of a sudden doesn't make sense anymore. Why? Because of insulin resistance. Because here the fat cells are flat like they're supposed to with a normal insulin receptor site, but now because my fat cells have grown, it now misshapes the insulin receptor site. And now it doesn't fit in anymore. So now it's like I'm trying to use my house key trying to get into my car. It doesn't work anymore. The insulin resistance can also be created by a high-fat diet. And because I showed the research on the high-fat diet, what happens is this insulin receptor site gets clogged. So now it's like I have the right key to my house, I have the right lock to my house, but now my lock is frozen. Here in, we live out in the country, and so we have a gate that we will lock our gate, and when it rains during the day and then freezes at night, and then I'm trying to unlock the gate with my correct key, now I can't get it in, right? Because it's frozen. That's the same thing that happens on a high-fat diet. So the worst fat is the saturated fat that comes from animals, and it's a total high-fat diet. So if we're eating a high-fat diet, even if it's plant-based, it can still cause this problem. So it's more fiber, less fat. So the plant fats don't have as much of a trigger as animal fats, but it eventually will, because just by getting rid of that saturated fat improves our diabetes outcome. So now, if I'm at my lock at the gate, I have to go get a blowtorch, which I do, and I have to take it and put it in the lock in order to dry out the humidity that's in there. Now, once it's dry, I can put my correct key in, and now I can unlock it. That blowtorch is the same as fiber. So when I eat more fiber, beans, whole grains, fruits and vegetables, now that's the issue here. So that fiber takes all that muck and gunk out of the insulin receptor site. So why we give people with type 2 diabetes insulin when this is the physiological process doesn't make sense. You see, we have a sick care model system, not a health care reversal system. So they manage disease. I try to help people reverse disease. I mean, I don't do anything. I just educate people. And it's the food that we're eating that creates the insulin resistance. Then now that creates all of these other problems and all of the side effects that comes along with it. The infections, the amputations, the blindness, the kidney disease, the cardiovascular disease. All of it is all related to this process. And even if we have somebody with kidney disease, so there's a lab that you can do. It's called an albumin test with your urine. So a microalbumin urea is a particular test that you take. I don't know if it's the same as here in Canada. Maybe one of the nurses here can tell me. But in the U.S., it's 30 and below is a normal albumin urea. 30 to 300 is microalbumin urea. Anything 300 and above is macroalbumin urea. And so what's happening is our kidneys, I'm making this very simple, they're a nice tight mesh. And as we continue to eat more animal products, the high protein problem, because kidney damage is a protein problem. And we go right back to the animal proteins again. All meats, even if it's fish or chicken, eggs, dairy, it doesn't matter. Again, it's not an all or a none, but it's on a continuum. So our kidneys are supposed to be a nice tight mesh, and no protein gets through it. But the more animal proteins that I eat, eventually they start to get a little bit unraveled. And so now a little bit of protein gets through there, just a little. And now I've got microalbumin urea. Macroalbumin urea is now when my kidneys look like this, and again, I'm making this very simple so you can understand, and now you can see that protein is just spilling out of my urine. And now I'm starting to get kidney problems. I might be heading towards dialysis. So how do we reverse it? If animal products are the cause, the good news is that you remove them, and your kidney functions will improve. Now, whether we go back down to 0 or not, or less than 30, we don't know. But because we don't know that there might be some permanent damage done. But if you had 6 or 7, 800 of a macroalbuminuria and you go plant-based, now you might end up with 100. Well, you don't need dialysis on 100. You know, so so even if that amount is permanent damage, 100 we can live with. But eventually, you know, hopefully, if we maintain this diet long enough, then even that will improve too. So how do we reverse this whole thing to go backwards again? High fiber, getting rid of the saturated fat, exercise, a less sedentary life, and then weight loss. And so how do we lose weight? Through a whole food plant-based diet, because now we can be satisfied with what we're eating, and no longer do we have to eat until our body just shuts us down because of all of this ultra processed food and the saturated fat in there. And now we start to lose weight because the animal products, generally a plant-based diet, a meal lasts about 24 hours, and it leaves our digestion. For an animal-based diet, it takes like 72 hours. And so what it does is it slows down our metabolism by about 13%. And so now we start to gain weight, and that's why we generally see people who eat animal products weigh more than people who eat plant-based. Now, of course, this is an umbrella, and I'm not. You can't, when you're looking at statistics, you can't look at individuals, because of course there's going to be people who eat plant-based and they might be heavy, and of course there's going to be people who eat animal products and they're of normal weight. So I'm talking statistically, and it's not an all or a none. So weight loss, get on an active diet and lifestyle, get rid of the animal products or at least severely cut it down. High fiber diet, lots of fresh fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, nuts, and legumes. And so now this is kind of what I was, so that was a pictorial, and now this is kind of a chart of how that happens. So now if I adopt a whole food plant-based diet that's high in fiber, low fat, nutrient rich, and then it decreases, what it does is it decreases my caloric density, which promotes natural weight loss without calorie counting, which then decreases my visceral and ectopic fat, which reduces my fat in the liver and pancreas, which then increases my insulin sensitivity. I have less lipotoxicity. It improves insulin response in muscles and liver. And then I have better beta cell function, which reduces glucotoxicity. Pancreas recovers insulin secretion. And then the gut microbiota improves. And through these higher amount of short-chain fatty acids, which enhances glucose metabolism. And again, this is mainly talking about omega-3s. Omega-3s coming in the source of walnuts, flax, chia, and hemp hearts. Those are the four highest. There's omega-3s in lots of things, but those are the four highest. And it's these short-chain fatty acids that also promote healing. And then it also normalizes blood glucose through our fasting glucose, and our glycohemoglobin A1C returns to a healthy range. And then we have diabetes remission. And there's no need for medication, and there's long-term metabolic health is restored. So what we are looking at, what I recommend for people is to learn to count fiber. Now, generally, people with diabetes are taught how to count carbohydrates. I encourage people to count fiber, because when we are counting fiber, I'm not talking about fiber supplements, I'm talking about real whole food that comes from beans and whole grains and fruits and vegetables. And then, of course, we have the fad diets out there counting protein. But if we want a true holistic approach that is actually going to focus on reversing disease, we count fiber. And to get to 50 to 100 is not an issue. So we eat whole plant foods whole. We cut down on the processed foods. Again, it's not an all or a none, but we do move towards that. We move towards eating more whole foods whole and getting rid of all those processed stuff. We want to cut down or eliminate as much dairy and animal flesh as possible. And this then causes weight loss naturally, and it's sustainable. And health is our goal, that our body is the temple, and we want to take the best care of it as we can. We want to drink 3 to 4 liters of water a day. That first 3 cups should be in the morning. Now, when we chug water, it doesn't act the same as when we sip it throughout the day. It acts as a detoxifier when I chug it. So throughout the night, our body has a normal circadian rhythm of detoxification. And that's why we have to sleep. Like, for example, we want to be to sleep by like 9 o'clock at night, because between 9 and 11 is when our brain detoxes. And when we're constantly get to bed 10, 11, or 12 or later, then it can increase our risk of the brain diseases, Parkinson's, and dementia, Alzheimer's, forgetfulness, those kinds of things. So 9 o'clock really is the best time to get to bed. And so when we wake up in the morning, then after all that detoxing, then we want to take in as much water as we can. And again, it's going to be something that you're going to work towards. It's not going to happen overnight. It probably won't even happen within a week or two. So be gentle on yourself if you're going to try this. And then the next 2 to 3 liters then should be throughout the day, away from your meals, because you want a full proper digestion. So you don't want to dilute your dilute your stomach acids. And so you want to stop your water 20 to 30 minutes prior to eating, and then you can pick up your water again an hour and a half after you're done eating. And so you'd get your 2 to 3 liters somewhere in between there. There's also a chronometer app that you can use to count your fiber, and it's very easy to use. There's a free version, and there's an in-app paid version. You don't need the paid version. I don't use it. You don't need it. You get everything that you need off the free version. And so go to your apps, and you can download that for free. And then exercise, which takes up glucose much more readily than fat cells do. So this is part of our problem, is that we turn processed foods, or we turn healthy whole foods into processed foods. When we go from onions to onion rings, 1 medium onion is only 88 calories and 4 grams of fiber. If we take those onion rings into 8 ounces of onion rings, it's 600 calories with no fiber. If we change oranges from juice, 1 5.5 ounce orange is 65 calories with 7 grams of fiber. 1 cup of orange juice has 104 calories with 0.5 grams of fiber. So the more that we process something, the less fiber that we get. And the same with olives to olive oil. So 5 Vlasic Spanish green olives is 25 calories with 0.5 gram of fiber. And 1 tablespoon of olive oil is 120 calories with no fiber. And then corn to corn oil, 1/2 cup of fresh corn is 89 calories with just under 5 grams of fiber. 1 tablespoon of corn oil is 120 calories with no fiber. It takes 12 to 15 ears of corn to equal 1 tablespoon of corn oil. And then if we take 8 ounces of Frito chips, it's 1,200 calories with no fiber. So we can also see the incredibly growing apple. 1 apple is about 80 calories with 5 grams of fiber. 1 cup of apple sauce with sugar, 160 calories with 2 grams. 1 cup of apple juice is 115 calories with no fiber. 1 slice of apple pie is 310 calories with 0.5 gram of fiber. And the apple pie a la mode, which is quite routine in America at least, 583 calories with a half a gram of fiber. The incredibly growing apple. So here we go. So fiber versus calories. So one sugar-free muffin, that's a Costco muffin. I actually called them. You know, if you notice on their container, there's no nutrition value panel on it. So I called them because I was curious. And like, why don't they have that? You know, because packages are supposed to have nutritional panels on it. So I called them. It took me a long time to get this information. I literally had to pull it out of them. 720 calories with 1 gram of fiber. This is now 720 calories and 30 grams of fiber. 720 calories, 720 calories, and you can eat all of this or that. So 1 2-pound pineapple, half of a cantaloupe, half of a kiwi, half of a papaya, grape, 5 ounces of grapes, 2 pears, and 2.5 large pieces of oatmeal bread. So I added all these calories up and all the grams of fiber, and there you go. This reverses disease, this causes disease. It's ultra processed. This is from the American Diabetes Association. If you're trying to keep your weight down, it's a good idea to keep your fiber intake up. So even they recognize the importance of fiber. In your mouth, fiber-rich foods are bulky and take more time to eat. In your intestines, they bind to fat and interfere with its absorption. By satisfying your appetite with fewer calories and less fat, fiber helps fill you up, but not out. Folks who eat high fiber diets weigh significantly less than those who don't, and they less likely to gain weight with age. So to me, I have tried these approaches with my own people, and so I do a non-drug approach, and I've done a 10-day program at my house. I live up in the Paul Lake area. So every once in a while, I run a 10-day program where people come and live, and they stay for 10 days. And I'm going to show you a continuous glucose monitor reading from a lady who was here at my last program, and this was in November. So this is November 20th, and I asked her, I said, after she'd been in my place for 7 days, I asked her, I said, what is your average A1C? It was 11.6, 7 of those days she's at my house. 40% in range, 36% high, 24% very high, and then she's got 1% very low. Standard deviation of 3.1. The average, now still November 20th, I said, she's been at my house for 7 days, and I said, show me what your glucose has been doing for 14 days with 7 of those days at my house. It's still November 20th, 10.5, 2.9 standard deviation, and then 58% in range, 31% high, 11% very high, and no lows or very low. Same day, November 20th, I said, okay, you've been at my house for 7 days. Show me what you've been doing for 7 days at my house. And she's gone down to 8.6, standard deviation 1.9, 91% in range in 7 days. No lows or very lows. She's got only now 1% very high and 8% high. I said, what have your blood sugars been doing? Still November 20th. What have your blood sugars been doing the last 2 days? 8.6, 1.2, 98% in range for the last 2 days. And then now here on the 21st, the next day, I said, what have your blood sugars been doing yesterday and today? 100% in range. 7.7, a standard deviation of 1, and she went from she was using, when she first got to my place, 150 units of insulin a day. 150. And by the time she left, or this day, she is down to about 10. And her blood sugars are doing that. So what was the program? I asked her, I said, What are you afraid of eating? She's had diabetes for many, many years, completely out of control. I had her blood sugars before she came to my house, and they were like 18, 19. And I have those numbers as well. And here she is 7 days later after years and years and years of way out of control diabetes, 7 days, and look at this. So I asked her, what are you afraid of? And she says, well, I'm afraid of fruit and potatoes. And then we just and I said, okay. So I took note, and then in our conversation, so like what are you going to feed us now? Because this was during intake. And I said, fruit and potatoes. And you should have seen her eyes and her jaw drop to the floor. And I said, give me a chance. Just hear me out here. Just what you're doing isn't working, so I can't make it any worse. Give me a try. Just let me try. And just believe, just let the program do its thing. So she said, okay. So what was the program? Very high fruit, like very high fruit. Like 5-6 pieces of fruit a day. Elimination of all animal products and processed carbohydrates, giant salads and vegetables, exercise water with a couple of 2-day juice detox. And she lost 8 pounds, was never hungry, and she was skeptical originally about a whole food plant-based diet, but actually loved it. And she's now even continued it to today, because I still keep in contact with her. What were some of the other benefits from the program from others who did not have diabetes? One lady came in with gout so bad, me and 2 other men had to carry her into the house. Carry her. And as I'm carrying her, I'm thinking, what in the world did I get myself into? And yet on day 7, I was having just a little chat with her, and I said, so how are you doing? And I asked her, she was sitting in her wheelchair, and I said, how's your pain? And she says, well, she looks up at the ceiling and she says, I don't know. And I said, well, like, where was your pain? I don't know. I said, well, do you have any pain right now? And she said, no. I said, what are you doing in your wheelchair then? And she got up for the first time. And the reason that she came to my house was because her husband, they're an elderly couple, and in their 80s, and he gave her an ultimatum. And he said, honey, I just can't take care of you anymore. She was total care, total bed rest. He had to do everything for her. He was getting physically and mentally worn out. And he said, honey, you've got a choice. You either have to go into a nursing home or you got to go to Dr. Janie's and see if she can help. And she says, I'm not going to either place. And that's how she came to me. And when he said to her that, well, you've got to make a choice, and if you're not going to go see Dr. Janie, then we're going to take you to a nursing home. She says, fine, I'll go to Dr. Janie's. And she came to me kind of like that, just kind of, not wanting to be there, giving me the cold shoulder, like I'm the one who, did this to her. And but I just, worked past it. And on day 7, she's walking with her walker. And so now I put her on an exercise program with walking. And a month later, her sister-in-law, or her daughter-in-law, sent me a text where she's actually walking for the first time unassisted. Whole food, plant-based diet. And in another presentation, I actually have her walking in that. So all physically looked younger and happier, and in that other presentation that I give, you can physically see the difference between them from the day 1 until the day they leave. It's amazing. It looks like 15 years have been taken off their life. They just look younger, they act younger. It's just amazing. Their fatigue greatly improved. One person that was her. One smoker stopped smoking with little to no cravings at all, and all became physically stronger. One lady came with PMS so bad, such as bloating, moodiness, depression, and that time in the month, she had none of that. Depression lifted for a few who were severely depressed. A few were so weak that they had not enough energy to speak. Their voices were progressively strengthened and strong by the end. And for all of them, their posture improved. They were walking, with their shoulders back and their back straight, and they kind of came like this. 10 days on a whole food plant-based diet. So this is, again, I just wanted to show you that it's not an all or a none, but I do want to show the Mediterranean diet versus the low-fat vegan diet in weight loss and blood sugars. So you see here that this is a Mediterranean here, and then we've got the washout period, which they're not on a Mediterranean or a vegan diet during this 2-week period, and then they swap. So one group does a Mediterranean, and then 2 weeks later does the vegan, and then those who did the vegan first do the Mediterranean. So they do that swap. And you can see that the vegan diet definitely outperforms the Mediterranean. But if we compared this to the American Diabetes Association diet, it would not even be as good as the Mediterranean. So there is a good, better, and best. So isn't a whole food plant-based more expensive? Because that's usually what people say to me. But no, that's not what the research says. It says that it shows that we can save more than $650 a year on our grocery bill compared to a standard American diet, and more than $870 compared to the Mediterranean diet. And then this one decreased food costs by 16%. Here's the research on that. And so what are the takeaway points here? So whole food plant-based diet is the key to reversal and prevention. 5 servings a day. This is what I recommend to my clients as I work with them. Shoot for 5 servings of fruit a day. Now, if you're on insulin, or if you have severe insulin resistance and you start eating fruit, then yes, your blood sugar is going to go up. But and that's why fruit or carbohydrates has become the enemy. But that's only half of the truth. So the half of the truth is that, yes, your blood sugar will go up, just like that lady who was at my house with diabetes that I showed you her continuous glucose monitor. For the first couple of days, like first 2 to 3 days, her blood sugars were all over the place, totally normal. But I also, at the same time, took away all of the animal products at the same time that I gave her all that fiber. And so I did that washout for her. So yes, your blood sugar is going to be all over the place. But know that if you're still going to continue to eat some animal products, you're still going to have some insulin resistance. So you're not going to be able to tolerate that kind of fruit intake of 5 to 6 pieces a day. And so just so you know that, if you're going to start swapping out that. So increase your fruit a little bit as you decrease your animal products a little bit, and you'll kind of, if you're going to keep them in your diet, then you kind of have to find that happy medium between blood sugars and but of course I put people on the ultimate best diet, and that's why it works so fast, because I'm the one feeding them, and I don't allow any food in my place. Because if I allowed them to bring food, even their favorite food, well, it's just going to mess up my statistics, and they're not going to leave happy because they're not going to get the results that they want. So I know the foods that people need. So 5 servings of vegetables a day. So usually when I have a salad, I'm just giving you an example. You don't have to eat this much, but you can work towards it. But I eat a bowl that is the size of a serving bowl, and it's like literally this big around, and it's often mounding, and that would be like that's just my salad, and so I love my salads. And then add whole grains and beans. Keep fat to 20% or less, and if you are going to Chronometer, then you can certainly look up that as well. You want to restrict or eliminate your processed carbohydrates and all of your processed foods. Restrict or eliminate animal products of all kinds. You want to increase your exercise and drink 3 to 4 liters of water a day. So with these principles, weight loss and weight maintenance is natural, and prevention and reversal are in the cause. If diet is the cause, then diet is the cure in prevention. And this is the same program for hypertension, high cholesterol, overweight, kidney disease, some cancers, GI problems, bloating, Alzheimer's, depression, arthritis, heart disease, any disease that's out there, this is the diet that I put my people on. It doesn't matter. So I've just given you, even if you don't have diabetes, if you may have something else, or if you're trying to deal with a loved one who has some kind of condition, I've just given you the recipe. It's amazing. Some people may need, just some tweaks. Like if someone's coming to me with some severe kidney problems, I'm going to tweak their diet a little bit. But I don't want to get into those specifics. But, some people might get a little bit of tweaks, but that's my program. And so you've just got my recipe for reversing and preventing disease for free instead of having to pay to come to me. So it really does work, and it's just amazing. And I know that this is a secular talk, but I want to just point out something in the Bible here. That in Genesis 1:29, and God said, "Behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in the which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat." So this is not a new diet. This is something that's been given to us from the very beginning of time. It's well researched. It's been proven again and again and again with secular people all around the world, of every language, of every nation. It doesn't matter where you go in the world, this is the program. And so the more that you adopt it, the more improvements that you'll see. So any comments or questions? Yes? Yeah, because what it does, see, digestion is a very grueling process. It is not some simple thing, even though we treat our stomachs like it's an iron vault and that we can put anything into it. Our body doesn't adjust too well like that. And it's so grueling that we can either detox or we can heal, or detox or digest. We can't do both. And so we have to have, if we want full healing, we have to have full acid in our stomach. And when we drink water, it actually dilutes the acid to a more base. And now our food can't digest the way that it's supposed to. That's a very good question. Yeah. Yeah. You want the opposite. Okay. Yes, thank you. So I do have some people who've come to me with that gag reflex and that they have to drink when they are eating. So what I do is I do not take water from them all at once. I help taper them down. At the same time, I'm increasing their fruit content. As we increase fruit content, our cells become more hydrated with all that fruit water, with just filled with all those antioxidants and bioflavonoids and all those wonderful chemicals, that natural chemicals that help keep us healthy and get us healthy. And so when we start to increase our fruit, we will find that we don't need as much water with our meals anymore. And so I do that at the same time. And I do try to, I have them try to keep it to 1 cup during the meal. So if you can just take a little bit of a sip, and eventually within, several weeks, the water's not even needed anymore. Yeah. Yeah, excellent. Thanks for letting me explain that. Yeah. Yes, I have done extensive research on that, and most of that, the food combining stuff like that, is more anecdotal. So people just feel better. And so if people feel better, then they should abide by those rules for them. But I don't, it's more anecdotal per person. You know, some people don't like cherries with bananas, you know, or, you know, don't like certain foods with other certain foods. But and I know that there's a lot of food combining rules out there. The only one that I do see a difference is fruits and vegetables, but it's not even greens, because greens seem to be a neutral. I very seldom run across anybody who has any digestive problems with fruit and greens. So greens are considered a neutral. The only thing, true fruits, so are non-sweet fruits like peppers, eggplant, squashes, tomatoes, those kinds of things. So the non-sweet fruit group can combine with both groups. And then the fruits and true vegetables, then generally I have people stay away. And and then we want to make sure that digestion is the best for every person. So fermentation can take place for some people who combine those groups. But in general, the other, like the proteins and sweet fruits and acid fruits, and, you know, I just don't find that in the research. Yeah, I wish I could. I know I've seen it in some cookbooks. Lauren, yes. Yeah, so we can look at, there's a couple of different charts that we can look at, and there is one, it's escaping my mind at the moment. When you look at the fiber content of different foods, it's just like escaping me at the moment, but there's a chart, and it shows how. So it uses, there's two charts. One uses white sugar as a base of 100, and the other one uses white bread as a base of 100. And then, can someone remind me what that chart is called? The glycemic index, yes, thank you. So the glycemic index, there's two of them. And so then research is done showing how much does blood sugars increase with certain fruits. And so when we understand the combination of fiber, somebody is not properly looking at the glycemic index. And so when we look at the glycemic index, the lowest numbers that we see that are well under 100 are fruits and vegetables, all fruits and vegetables. And then what is higher, animal products are the highest insulin producing food group there is, and yet we're never told about that because of industry. Yep. Yeah, so that's really a lack of understanding of the physiology that I just showed you, you know, with the chart and with the picture that I showed you. So, you know, and I just showed you, I proved, you know, a high fruit diet with that lady with her continuous glucose monitor. I do not restrict any fruit. So if she said, well, I know my blood sugars really just go through the roof with grapes, I'm going to give her grapes. I don't care what people say. If there's a certain food that they're afraid of, I don't want to eat mangoes, I give them mangoes, because I want to get them over that false understanding that fruit is bad. Yeah, so really the only thing, you know, people should stay away from dried fruits, figs, dried figs, and dates. Those, even when the inflammation's kind of gone down and blood sugars are normalized, some people still have problems with those, so I warn people about those things. But generally, I restrict no fruit, and I even put them on a fruit fast of only fruit for a whole day or two. So yeah, but see, the key is that we have to get back to that picture. We have to get on a high fiber diet. We have to reduce our animal products and the saturated fat, and replace it more with the short chain fatty acids like the omega-3s, which are very healing. So if you're going to continue to have animal products, you have to figure out that balance. And see, our world teaches moderation in everything. I don't believe in moderation in everything. I don't believe that for a second. Because even in moderation, it shows that there is an imbalance. And so you're never going to get to that amount of fruit intake as long as someone's having still animal products. So you really have to get rid of the animal products to get to that number of fruit servings. Anything. Anything that had a mother, anything that used to have eyes and eggs. Doesn't matter. Yeah, protein is protein when it comes to the animal world. Yeah, good questions. Yes. Yes, there is. I can't put everything in my talks, and that would have been one of those things, so thanks for asking. But yes, so diabetes, fasting, first of all. Now, if you're on medications, I'm not talking about medications, but if you're not on medications, you always talk to your doctor if you are, or see me, to help work with your doctor. But anyway, I'm talking about someone without medications. So 2 meals a day is ideal, and then not having that third meal. And so in those 2 meals would be breakfast and a later lunch, like no later than 3. So eating between 1 and 2 p.m. and no later than 3, and nothing after 3. Shows that people can actually have good control of their diabetes with those 2 meals a day. And then actually fasting for a day or two, you'll find that your blood sugars will even improve faster by fasting. Yeah, so 2 meals a day. And if you are going to eat that third meal, it should, and there are some people who come to me with, they're like, nope, I'm going to eat 3 meals. I don't care what you say. I have to work with them. So I give them only a piece of fruit or 2 for supper. And but within a couple of days, they don't even want that third meal anymore. And so I just kind of have to work with people wherever they are. And but yeah, 2 meals a day. Yeah, and there's research on that. Yeah, it's wonderful. Any other questions? Yes. Stress? Oh, there is so much on stress and diabetes. Yeah, lots and lots. I was working with a lady who was a UPS driver, and her blood sugars were so out of control. And I knew she was eating the way I'd recommended. She was walking, she was drinking her water, getting to sleep on time. It was amazing, and yet her blood sugars did improve, but not fully. They just went down to a point, and then they stopped improving. And I said, I just don't understand. Either you're not telling me the full disclosure of what you're eating, and you're kind of cheating on the side or something. I don't know what's going on here. And then I thought about stress, and I asked her about her job, and that's when I found out she was a UPS driver. And they are required, like by the minute, they are tracked. And very, very high stress job. And so she was like, a light bulb went off, and she's like, yeah, that's definitely me. And but she did not want to quit her job, so I just helped to work with her the best that I could under the circumstances. Yeah, stress. There's just tons and tons of research on stress and diabetes too. Very good question. You guys are full of good questions. Yes. Back to what? Fasting? Yeah, fasting once a week. Yeah, is generally wonderful. Yep. Yeah. Well, so it would be from like 2 p.m. Your last meal of that day, and then you'd be eating breakfast, not that day, but the next day. So it's like a day and a half. Yeah, because you don't want to eat before you go to bed. Yeah. Good. For someone who is trying to control their diabetes in the beginning, I would, you can do just a juice fast, but their blood sugars may go wonky. And some people have a tendency to get scared and because they don't really understand what's going on. But juice fasting is really good. But I usually, under my recommendation, under my supervision, I juice fast people. But yeah, that is really good too. But if we are going to just go back, see, a juice fast or a water fast, really the purpose of it is to cleanse our palate. And because if we're craving a bunch of foods that we know that we want to get over, then juice fasting or water fasting is a wonderful way to get over those cravings. Yes. It depends on what juice you're talking about. If it's homemade, it's wonderful and fresh. But the problem comes when you get it from the grocery store. Any juice. Because what the manufacturers do, they get all the oranges during orange season, or all the apples or grapes or whatever, and and they juice them all at once. They put them in this giant vat, and it sits there for months and months, and maybe even longer. And so by that time, it's dead. There's no nutrients left. The color is brown. It has no sweet, nice, fragrant smell to it anymore. And so what they do in order to fulfill the orders that are coming in, they add a flavor enhancer. And so, which gives it its orange color again, or whatever color juice. And it gives it an aroma to make it smell like it's nice and fresh. And then they have the nutrients panel on the back, shows that it's got all these nutrients, but it's because of the flavor pack. The flavor pack is the nutrients. So it's basically chemicals that they add back in again, but they don't have to put it on the label because they are not making a claim about what they're putting into it. So it's a loophole. So because they're not making a claim, like it's got extra calcium, or because oranges are wonderful for calcium. Did you know that if you eat as many oranges in a day as you calorically need, like for me, 1,500 calories a day is usually what I eat. And if I eat 1,500 calories in just oranges, I think it's like 24 oranges. It gives me like 1,200 calories or 1,200 milligrams of calcium. It's amazing. So the key is when you're going to juice, make sure you juice yourself. Is that the drug it comes in? The jug. Yeah, they get away with saying natural because they're not making any claim upon what they're putting into it. Yeah. I mean, there's all sorts of loopholes I mean, it's just like maybe I shouldn't even go there. It's not about diabetes. Okay. Any other questions? Yes? Yes, yeah, thank you. So if someone is going from, uh, like my people who come in, off of the world, off their diet, I kind of help to transition them for a little while before they get to my place. So it's not such like a big shock when they get to my place on their system. And so I work with them. And I do the same thing when I'm working with my clients one-on-one, like over Zoom or something. And so I kind of ease them into it a little by little. And and then, but we can have some big detox rebound systems, detoxing like headaches, extreme fatigue. People can get the flu. They can get fevers. They can get achy. They can get a cold. They can get a sore throat. They can get a cough. They can get acne. I mean, all sorts of things, and all the way to the point where people feel like they're dying. I mean, like literally, they feel like they're dying, and they just hate life. And when they pull through the other end, they're just like amazed, with better health. So yeah, we have to be gentle on ourselves. We have to be kind when we're making this transition. So I generally don't recommend doing that overnight. I generally recommend, let's do this methodically and in some kind of an order. And like I do with people coming to my place too. So yeah, you might, people need to sleep a little bit more, need to drink more water. You need to take better care. Maybe not do as hard of exercise. If you're a gym goer, if you're used to stacking wood all day, you might want to hold off on that. Doing anything like that physical. While you're making that transition. But after a couple of weeks, your body just kind of adjusts, and then you can kind of get back to your life again. Yes, Richard. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, on the opposite, if we just move to a whole food plant-based diet and we don't know anything, all of a sudden our health improves. So we could look at it like that too. Just get to a whole food plant-based diet, fresh fruits, vegetables, grains, beans, nuts, seeds, unprocessed, and our health improves. We don't need to know anything. Yeah. All right. Any other last minute comments or questions? Was this helpful? What about comments? Tell me what you learned, and then I'm going to let you go. Okay, careful with the meat though. Okay, excellent. So at the back, there are some cookbooks, whole food plant-based cookbooks. It's not my personal cookbook. I'm in the process of making one. But I really like that one the best because it's got a wonderful base to it. It's got very few processed foods in it. I mean, I can count on one hand, and those are easy to swap out. So, to something else or use them because even if you use everything, those processed foods in there, you're still going to be well ahead of the game, just as they are. The only thing for me, I like my food to be very flavorful and like it's a party for my taste buds. So for me personally, I like to double my seasonings, like for the chili or the burgers or something that's in there. Or the spaghetti sauce, I double the seasonings. So if you're going to purchase it, it's $25. You can either e-transfer me or you can give cash. But so just know that you might have to double the seasonings. So I've gotten to know the taste buds of the people of this cookbook very, very well. So it's well worth the value. Anything else? Tell me what else you learned. Tell me what you learned, Travis. Yes, excellent. Uriel, what'd you learn? Praise God. Michael, do I eat twice a day? Eat twice a day. That's what I encourage, yes. That's right. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because it really helps with our metabolism and to reverse our risk of disease and to reverse it. Yeah. Yeah, because every time that we put food into our body, our detox system has to stop. Yeah, and now it has to digest. Yeah, so it makes a big difference. Yeah, 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 that's right. Excellent. I'm glad that you've noticed that because that is true. Yeah, for you specifically though, see the 3 o'clock is the cutoff because that's when our digestion wants to sleep. It's starting to slow down, and usually that's when most people load the body up with the largest meal. And breakfast should be the largest meal, lunch then should be the second largest, and supper should be the smallest, if anything. And when I mean smallest, I mean 1 or 2 pieces of fruit, and that's it. And so generally that's why nothing after 3. I consider a portion to be like 1 apple, 1 orange, 1 banana, a cup of any loose fruit, like any of the berries, 1 cup, a couple of